What's up, YouTube? Okay, so in this video we are going to be installing a big red in this Savage X. This is Skylar's motor. He is letting me install it for him. Some of it I'm going to fast forward through, and some of it we are going to slow down and talk about some things like linkage adjustments and how to set everything up properly before you run it. So yeah, let's get going on it. Okay, now there's something I want to talk to you guys about when it comes to before you install a clutch, especially if you're using a used one. So these pins get some wear on them. Okay, so what you want to do, anytime you're this far into your truck, you always want to clean these up while you have them out. You might as well. It takes just a couple of minutes. I recommend. I wouldn't use a rough sandpaper. You could use an SOS pad, you could use anything, but definitely, deburr these things, get rid of the grooves, or just clean off the dirt. You want to make sure that your clutch is always operating very smoothly, and the easiest way to do that is to just rub it. So I'm using 4000, more of a polishing paper versus an actual sandpaper, and just clean them up. Clean the area up. You can see that grooves have been forming, and so you just want to clean it up the best you can around those little pegs. Make sure everything is just groove free. Now you don't want your clutch sticking, nothing like that. So I always just give them a quick little cleanup. You don't need to get crazy with it, that's for sure. Okay, so you see that? It's not super crazy, but it is, smooth them out, got the dirt off of them, the grooves. Another thing is inside your clutch bell. Now, I would always recommend using Teflon shoes, the PTFE shoes. Now these will not ruin your clutch bell. When you're using an aluminum shoe, a groove develops in here and you will eventually need to replace it. But with plastic shoes, you just clean it out, clean out the rubbed plastic, use some brake cleaner, and then when you're done, you could even just rub it with some sandpaper like that, just to make sure that it's all out of there. But it looks great. I did notice that his clutch bell bearings are shot. I'll get those replaced for him. And then as far as your shoes go, see how it's got kind of, some overhang. Obviously, it's not going to hurt nothing, but just in lieu of making sure that everything is working properly, rub all of the edges of your clutch shoes, inside, outside, just Just hit them real quick with that sandpaper, get all that off there. Make sure that your shoes are going to function properly. And I will do that for all of the shoes. See, look at how much better. Just real quick with some 4000, look at how much better those shoes look already. You're not trying to take, you know, a bunch off. You know, you're not trying to eliminate material. All you are is trying to round these edges so nothing catches and there's no issues later on. Now, when installing your clutch, you want to make sure that your clutch is all the way back, unless, you know, I mean, I've never seen where you needed to shim it forward. Now, sometimes the collet that you have, and sometimes it's the collet that comes with the motor. I'm going to try the old collet first and see how that sits against the block. Hopefully we have good contact, and that's... See how that's sitting forward like that? So let's see what the other collet looks like on this motor. And we will choose the best collet. Okay, so they're both pretty similar. You know, I would like to see that sit all the way back. It kind of depends on how your clutch is going to sit inside the truck, whether, you know, because you don't want your bell being too far out. You know, you want good contact with your spur. And so we will, I'm going to go check my other collets and see if I don't have a better fitting one. I won't film that, but yeah, let me do that and we'll be back. Okay, now as far as tightening down the flywheel, I like to stick a zip tie down there in the crank window and let it kind of smash in there and then tighten. And that way I'm not, you know, damaging anything. It's kind of hard to tighten that up without, you know, ripping the motor apart, but you got to stop the crank from turning while you tighten that. And then at that point, there's no use for Loctite. I did not find a collet that would allow that to sit more flush. So this little gap here is going to have to be okay for now. I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't think it's a real issue. I mean, you don't want it rubbing. But I would like that gap to be ever so slightly smaller, but I think it'll be fine. So let's continue on with the install. Right, after you get your shoes on, you always want to double check them, make sure they're opening. Just kind of grab them and pull them. See that? Working just fine. Perfect. Okay, so Skylar's bearings in his clutch bell are shot. He does have, I mean, the two are shot. There is one here that's good. I don't think it's making any noise or anything like that. I think it's, you know, a pretty good bearing. Yeah, it sounds good to me. So we're just going to slap one new one in there for him. Because these guys are missing their shields on both sides, and, you know, they feel loose. They're just not in good shape. So now I like to use these Avid clutch bearings. So they clean these. They don't grease them. They dry lube them for their clutch bearings, and they're really nice. They're $1 a piece, and just absolutely amazing bearings. Okay. Now when it comes to shimming, you want to make sure that your shoes are completely covered. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but you want to make sure that your shoes are completely covered. You know, you definitely don't want your bell like that, but you don't want it rubbing either. You want to make sure that that's got a nice free spin to it. So we are going to put one shim underneath. Okay, so we are going to start with just one shim behind the clutch bell, just to give that, you know, just a touch of breathing room there. Of course, we'll check it. Woo! Okay, so we still have full shoe coverage, and we got amazing spin. Absolutely amazing. That is, look at that. No sound. You can always tell a bad bearing if it makes noise. That is spinning so freely and so quietly. That is absolutely perfect. Okay. Now the Savage comes with a spacer of some type, kind of like that. We can use that. I kind of wish I had something metal, just because the clutch can get pretty hot. I don't want that to melt. So I think we're just going to shim it with metal shims. It's probably going to take a whole grip of them. But yeah, the stock Savage, or when it's stock, it comes with this real thick brass spacer right there. And I don't have any of those, unfortunately. So we are just going to have to stack a bajillion shims until we get close. And so if I can find a super thin shim, maybe one more, maybe not, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, so we lost a couple thinner ones. We'll put a thicker one on there. And we'll try one of these. No. We're gonna add that one. Okay, now let's throw this screw in here and let's take a look. Let's see how it looks. So most people will tell you to Loctite this. Once again, not really a fan of Loctite where you don't need it. I will just use my zip tie and crank this puppy down. Just like that. Okay, now let's check and see how free our clutch bell is. Okay, but we got no movement. And you can hear a slight sound. I don't know how well you guys can hear that. So we are going to remove a shim. Hopefully I can find a real good thin shim. There's a thin one. Okay, we have ever so slight amount of movement now, and it is absolutely dead silent. Look at that spin. Spinning for days, baby. That is a perfectly shim clutch. Got full shoe coverage, little bit of wiggle, and baby smooth. Awesome. Okay, this motor is ready to go in the truck. Okay, now as far as the installation goes, so what we're going to do first is we're going to do a soft drop. Okay, we are going to put this motor in, right? We're not going to worry about cinching it down or anything like that yet. Okay, we're going to get it in there, and first what we're going to do is we're going to look at linkages and how this all needs to be set up, right? And a lot of that is the throttle and the ball. Okay, so we're gonna thread this guy on here a little bit. Okay, we are going to turn everything on. Okay, we're going to make sure everything's at a neutral position. And we are going to check. So, I mean, obviously you got to get the motor sitting, you know, kind of where it needs to be. Just snug it up against the spur. A little bit of error is okay in this because we can always fix it at a different part of the linkage. But what we want to do is we want to measure the ball length from here to the carb. You also want to make sure that your arm is positioned properly so you get a straight pull on the linkage, right? And the best way on the Savages is to line the ball up with this hole perpendicular, right? So if you need to loosen this and angle the ball forward or lean it back, but the stock settings of how this motor came is pretty close. You want your carburetor set. You want your pull on your carb to be as what's that? Parallel, straight, however you want to say it. You want everything to be as straight as possible. Okay, so you just do a dry set. You adjust the angle of your carb. However you need to adjust that to get that nice straight pull. And then you want to measure your ball. See, it's got to sink down quite a bit. Okay, our ball is close. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out. And at this point is when we're going to tighten down the carb. We got our angle set, how it needs to be. And so now we're going to cinch down the carb. They say to get it tight and then a half a turn. That's as tight as you go on that and no tighter or you can damage it. Okay, so our carb angle is set. Now let's install the motor, set mesh, and then we will go back over setting up the linkage. Now I like to set mesh with these blue paper towels. I fold it in half and then I drive it in there. Right? Cinch it down. Not super tight, but you definitely got to tighten them up a little bit. Now, some guys will talk about the paper towel trick like it's dumb, but it's accurate. You know, if you use the paper towel, it's accurate. You don't have problems. You don't strip spurs. You're, just good to go. And what you want, you'll hold your clutch bell and you will just rock it back and forth ever so slightly. Now, if you've got a slight bit of movement, you're perfect. Hear that? That's too tight. You don't want a sound like that. You want a nice, smooth sounding, connection or whatever you want to call it. Gear mesh, there we go. Okay, I've got a little bit of movement. Nice and smooth. But one other thing with gear mesh that no one really talks about is motor alignment. You need to make sure that your clutch bell isn't on an angle because that'll grind away at your spur. So you always want to double check and make sure that your motor is sitting in there straight. Now I can tell that it's at a slight angle, so I need to do it again. I'm going to just hook up the exhaust real quick. Okay, so with everything on, so that ball being all the way in, that is a little bit short. So we are going to lengthen it back up. I didn't have the motor in there, I was just guessing. Okay. Okay. One thing to watch for when you're setting up your linkage. After you connect your ball, you can see that I can still push in on that ever so slightly. You definitely want to make sure that your linkage is going to close every time. So we're going to just screw that out, another ream, and we're going to reinstall it. Right? Okay. So that linkage is holding that carb tight. Like I said, I don't know how well you guys can see it. I'm sorry if you can't. I'm doing my best with what I have, but yeah. So this linkage is absolutely holding this carb completely closed, right? And then we do have a return spring that we're going to install. So let's get that done. Okay. Actually, we're going to have to adjust the fuel nipple before we install that. So we will do that here in a minute after we turn that fuel nipple. But let's check our linkage and make sure that it is opening our carb all the way. Okay. So we are getting full open. And that's what we're aiming for. That's perfect. Okay. Now, checking my linkages. This here is hitting my rod. So yeah, we might need to flip the linkage over. So let's do that real quick. Let's go at it from underneath. We'll install it from underneath like this. And let's double check, make sure, see now the linkage doesn't hit. Perfect. Okay. So let's reinstall that. Yep, see how the linkage goes underneath it now? I didn't know that, but that's why you check and double check. Okay. Our carb is absolutely opening all the way. It is at a slight angle, so I am going to adjust the carb angle ever so slightly. Back it off until that carb moves. Check it. Okay, it didn't like that adjustment, so we are going to put it back. Let's find a spot that it likes. Okay, that looks like the money right there. Sometimes you gotta check, double check, recheck, and then check it again. Okay, our carb is opening all the way. The linkages aren't interfering. It's looking good. It's looking just about done. Okay. Now let's do our fuel routing. So the draw on the Savage, they like it. The factory goes around the back. I am definitely a fan of that. I don't like how it goes up and around like that so much, but it's out of the way of the shocks. It's away from the heat from the exhaust. It's definitely, good, in my opinion. So let's get our little crescent wrench here. we are going to loosen the nipple ever so slightly, and let's get it turned to the angle we want it. About right there. And then you got to kind of hold the nipple as you tighten. Might need to go at it from this angle. Now you don't want to crank too hard on that. You could strip out your carb, cause some serious damage. That's never good, ever. Okay, so our fuel inlet is now adjusted properly. Let's install the return spring. And this is just insurance. Sometimes they work really well, sometimes they don't. You know, with the Savage, I think you should rubber band it personally, just to make sure that everything's gonna be good. Get that air filter back on there. Get that spring on top of it. There we go. Yeah. Now let's hook up our fuel line. Turn the truck off. Hook up our new fuel line here. Get our pressure line set. All right. Okay. Now this is how I install motors. You know, of course, it's all opinion. You know, you guys need to figure out your own way. But hopefully this video can kind of show you a little bit and help you out. I appreciate all you guys for watching. We're almost at 100 subscribers. That giveaway is coming soon, so stay tuned for that. And as always, guys, thank you.